All right, hello. This is Group One. We're doing our project on PBIS, and yeah, thank you all for watching. All right, so PBIS is a framework that maximizes the selection of evidence-based preventions and interventions with youth, specifically with behavior. So goals of PBIS are to pretty much cultivate and let kids learn different ways in which they can manage themselves socially, emotionally, um, and behaviorally in the classroom. And two keys for PBIS to be successful are a positive and safe environment where all students can grow and feel like they belong, and also an environment in which there are healthy relationships between teachers, students, and all adults in a school building.
So there are three tiers for PBIS. The first tier is universal, so all students will receive this type of support. Then there's tier two, which is selected. So normally it's small groups or even in a classroom, and only about 10% of students, 10 to 20% of students will receive this type of support. And the last tier, tier three, is targeted or intensive. So not a lot of children will receive this, and it is for individualized interventions.
All right, so just to go over the history of PBIS, it was created by Rob Horner in 1998. In the 80s is when in this country, a lot of educators realized that we need to improve our behavioral interventions in schools, urban schools, suburban schools, just all over, had this consensus that we need to work on behavior interventions. Then in the 90s, Rob Horner actually received a grant, and this has let him establish the PBIS Center. So this kind of launched PBIS as we know it today. In the 2000s, this center that he created further developed PBIS and also provided professional development on PBIS to 16,000 schools nationwide. And that takes us to where we are today, in which schools across the nation utilize PBIS in a wide variety of forms.
So there are many types of PBIS interventions, but we're going to be focusing on five. So the first one is Classroom Dojo, token economy. The second is check in and check out. The third is positive attendant. The fourth is taking a break. And five is group contingencies.
All right, so with the token economy, we're going to focus specifically on Class Dojo. And this is an online resource that teachers can use to manage their behavioral expectations and to be consistent across the class. This is something that can be displayed in the classroom as a reminder of expectations. And the main goal of Class Dojo is to give students points for reinforcing positive behaviors, whether it's perseverance, whether it's collaboration, and it also allows their parents to know what they're earning points for throughout the day and also potentially what they're losing points for throughout the day. So this is an amazing resource.
So check in and check out, also known as PSYCHO. Um, so the check in and check out system is a tier two PBIS system. It helps students monitor and track how they perform daily in the classroom. Also, the check-in and check-out system, it involves a student and a paired staff member that perform daily meetings about behavior and social and about their social emotional goals. Um, it internalizes success and accomplishment of goals. It helps students self-monitor and correct. And it also improves and establishes daily home and school communication and collaboration because each student has to get their a form signed off by their parent so they can perform this system of check in and check out. This should be done with a student that has exhausted all other options for PBIS. So if there's a school that does Classroom Dojo and the student doesn't seem to be responding well to that, they should probably move on to check in and check out. Check in and check out is done in the beginning and end of every school day, and it's for a predetermined amount of time, normally about 2 to 5 minutes. It shouldn't really last long because then it becomes a dependency between the teacher and the student and the paired staff member. And also, it should be done outside of the student's normal classroom. The most important facets of the check-in and check-out system are definitely the who and the where, just because it allows the student to be viewed with a fresh set of eyes and it helps them build a relationship with somebody outside of the classroom. Also, the environment of check in and check out greatly influences how a student will react to the feedback throughout the day.
All right, so how this happens, they will meet with the staff member they're assigned to, whether it's a teacher, a counselor, a behavior technician. They'll meet with this person first thing in the day. They're going to receive their point sheet, which has their goals set out for each day. With the check-in and check-out system, this is a great way to implement differentiation because each student is going to have different goals and different things that they need to work on in the classroom and outside of the classroom. So throughout the day with this goal sheet, the teacher will go ahead and rate and grade the student on how they're doing with reaching these goals. It may be a number system like zeros or ones, twos, but it could also be, an alphabet system like grades A, B, C. So at the end of the day, the student will see how much points they've gotten or how much points they've lost throughout the day. And hopefully during the checkout time, that student will be rewarded. Or if they're not rewarded, they'll just continue to receive, positive language and positive feedback on what they can do the next day.
So, positive attending. So, positive attending is defined as molding and praising positive behavior that one sees inside of a student. Positive attending has been proven itself effective in improving student behavior in a wide variety of education models. The key to positive attending is broken down into 8 parts. So, be specific. For each goal that the child may have, you need to be very specific and direct. Be immediate, be consistent and frequent, be preventative, praise the opposite, avoid criticism and derogatory feedback, focus on the student performance, and actively ignore disruptive behavior.
All right, and just to break down those 8 goals further, just so we're clear on what those are. So yeah, being specific is telling students exactly what you want to see them display. You can tell them this at recess, at lunch, during class time, but just being very specific in what your expectations are. Being immediate too. So you want to give students feedback as soon as possible because especially working with younger grades, a lot of kids don't have a long attention span or a long memory. So you want to be very quick in giving them feedback and what they're doing well. So you want to be consistent and be frequent with it. So you want to make a habit of consistently giving positive praise and also making this frequent to create a positive atmosphere in your classroom. What be preventative means is that you want to catch students being positive in the right moment. So instead of redirecting those who are not meeting your expectations, you want to catch those that are doing the right thing. And that will also help prevent a lot of behavior that can be disruptive in the class. So praising the opposite means you are praising the opposite of being off task. So when you see someone who is quiet or ready to learn or doing the right thing, you point that out rather than pointing out someone who is not meeting your expectations. So praise the opposite of negativity. Avoid criticism. So you want to use positive language only, even if a kid may be trying to insult you or cussing at you, whatever it may be. Avoid going negative and just stay positive at all times. So focus on student performance. You want to focus on how they're performing and not their ability. So maybe if there's a student who is not showing a great ability, maybe in their grades, you want to still show praise to their performance of, hey, I see that you're persevering every day. I see that you're trying hard. I see that you're problem solving. So you want to praise what they're doing, their actions, their performances. And ignoring disruptions, pretty much ignore attention that is seeking attention in a negative way. So if a student is trying to get attention through making beats in class or things that are not meeting your expectations, you want to ignore that if feasible, and then, praise the opposite.
So, taking a break. Taking a break is a tier 1 student support system. Taking a break provides the classroom with a way for students to positively express their emotions without disrupting the natural flow of the classroom or even having to be removed from the learning environment. This provides students to remove themselves from the obstacle that they may be facing. Say a student is getting frustrated with their work and they're not really sure how to move forward. Sometimes it's really good for a child to just step back and take a breather before they get right back into the academic world. It allows them to relax and decompress and return when they feel emotionally better. This should be done with students who are not complying to the classroom rules due to frustration, anger, or even boredom. Naturally, when a child becomes frustrated with a situation in the classroom, they often express it very boldly and very vividly throughout the classroom. And with taking a break, it gives them a chance to just remove themselves before they get to that point.
And some ways in which this can be implemented in a classroom, it's broken down into two categories. There's verbal ways and then there's nonverbal ways. We'll start with the verbal. So perhaps having a code word or a phrase that a student can use when they do need a break is a very good idea. Just a quick phrase, hey, I need to go, or just whatever you and the student develop. So the student after this would go to a designated area and just take time to relax, decompress, and just get away from whatever is frustrating them. And hopefully, when the student has returned, you definitely want to thank them and make sure that their entrance back is positive. And you want to make sure that they've effectively gotten out their negative emotions and that they're ready to come back to class peacefully with no problems. So that's the verbal way. There's also a nonverbal way in which this can be implemented. So maybe having a card, like a break card, something like that, that a student can use as a flash pass to say, hey, I need to step out. I need to have a moment of myself. So yeah, this student, just like they would give you the code word, they'd give you the card, then they can go to their area where they're allowed to relax and get away from whatever is frustrating them. And also, like with the verbal, with the nonverbal, when they're ready to come back to class, you want to greet them positively, and you want to make sure that they've released their negative emotions and that they're ready to come back and learn and be a positive contributor.
So the last one is group contingencies. So group contingency is a classroom management system that used to support and promote appropriate classroom behavior. Group contingencies have been proven to improve academic and social outcome for students and educators. So there are 7 steps to designing a group contingency. The first step is to choose your targeted behaviors. The second step is to choose your groups. Third is to determine how points are earned. This fourth is decide how you will reward points. 5 is to choose who awards those points. 6 is to determine a schedule, and 7 is to select the rewards.
So we're going to go deeper into these 7 steps that are very key to group contingencies. So with choosing your targeted behaviors, you want to choose clear and explicit behaviors. You don't want something that there's a gray area with. You want to choose something that's very clear, very explicit, something that your students know you expect of them. And before you choose these behaviors, you definitely want to take time to reteach these to your class with whatever it is. So take time to teach it and then lay out the clear expectations for them. 2 is choosing groups. So the positive of doing groups is that it encourages collaboration between students, which is preparation for life. You have to collaborate. And it also prevents students from being singled out when their behavior is not what you're expecting or up to par. Third is to determine how points are earned. Points can be earned independently, so it could be up to students as individuals to earn points. It could be a dependent thing in which they're in groups, or the class's success depends on maybe a few people. And there's also interdependent, which allows us to be interconnected in how we earn points in group contingencies. So how you award them, you can use a token economy such as ClassDojo. A lot of other schools will give out their own form of currency, like Mustang dollars or whatever it may be. So you definitely want to have a clear and specific system in which you are using to reward your students and give them points. You also want to choose who awards the points. So there's self-monitoring, in which you can have faith in the students to give themselves points when it is appropriate. And then there's also teacher monitoring, which is more common, in which the teacher is monitoring and seeing, who was on par and gives points that way. And you also want to have a schedule for how you do this. So how long is this group contingency going? Is it a month-long thing? Is it for a special event? So the length of it you want to make very clear to your students. Also, the frequency of awarding points. Is this something that happens at the end of the day? Is this something that happens throughout class? So you definitely want to have the frequency be on par so the students know what's expected. And then a specific time to reward your students. So, hey, maybe it's a fun Friday in which we, get to go to the school store and get something, or we have a day in which we could go outside. So you want to have a specific time in which students know they will be rewarded. And then also with choosing the rewards for your students, you want to get input from your class. So maybe giving them a survey. Hey, what's your favorite candy? What's your favorite toys, favorite shows? So you definitely want to have student input so you know the interest of your class. And also with this, just be aware of your area and where you're teaching, because you want to be culturally competent with what you're choosing to give your kids as well.
Okay, so the next is data. Whether or not PBIS works, well, PBIS versus schools that do not have a PBIS system. So the results of that is that school attendance has improved, academic performance has improved in all subjects, and the suspension rates for Hispanic students have decreased, and the use of physical restraints on students have reached its lowest since 2009. Also, there's a decrease in referrals for misbehavior in academic settings.
All right, so just to go over some pros of PBIS. So there are four main elements to make sure that this is successful. So knowledge is very key. So kids need to have a knowledge of what is clearly expected of them in the system. Importance of a connector. So you definitely want to make sure you're building strong relationships with your students while having a PBIS system. Of the school environment. So this is something that should carry into multiple places in the school building. So it should not just be for your class, but if they're going to specials or recess, they should be able to know that I'm held to high expectations in all areas in my school. Then also communication. So when kids are earning points, when kids are doing an excellent job, you need to make sure that you are letting them know that, absolutely. And all of these things help provide youth with a sense of belonging and what they believe is a safe classroom. And it also is going to help their academic experience because they're more in control of their emotions and things of that nature, which oftentimes do come back to her academics.
So, the cons of PBIS. There are many myths of PBIS and their implementation. So, the first thing is that PBIS systems reward students for doing things that they should be doing, such as respecting the teacher or, I don't know, for example, respecting a classmate. The next is that PBIS doesn't work for certain grade levels. Many people believe that once you pass elementary, a PBIS system doesn't work. Once you stop rewarding a student for a specific behavior, the students will stop doing that particular behavior. So if you constantly reward a student from coming to school every day, and then one day you decide to stop, maybe they won't come to school as frequently as they would have when they were getting rewarded. The last thing is setting up a store for rewards is expensive and time consuming. A lot of people feel that setting up let's say a dojo store is very expensive.
All right, so to wrap everything up, PBIS began in 1998 and is now used in schools nationwide in thousands of schools across our country. So PBIS is divided into three tiers. So there's tier one, where most kids will fall. So tier one interventions will work for 80 to 90% of students. Then there's tier two, which is a little bit more intensive. So for youth where tier one is not working, they may move on to tier two. And then tier three is the highest and the most restrictive of the tiers. But all of these tiers provide unique strategies to work with children that fall within them. So there are five main interventions we focused on today. There's the token economy, and we use Class Dojo as an example of that. So it's a way for students to earn points and see what they're earning points for. There's group contingencies, so working within groups or within systems to reach goals or to get rewards. There's taking a break, which allows students to relax and just have a moment where they can decompress independently. Also checking in and checking out. So this is where a teacher or any school staff member is, checking in and checking out with the student and reflecting on the pros and cons of the day. And there's also positive attending. So that's where you're modeling positive behavior, but you are also praising positive behavior when you see it. To go over some pros of that. So PBIS leads to healthy relationships between teachers and students. It helps foster a safe and accepting community with students, and also encourages students to regulate their emotions. Some potential cons of this, depending on how you go about it, are the resources required. It may take more money, more time away from an educator. It could be harder to implement at older grade levels. And the motivation for it is sometimes extrinsic rather than intrinsic, meaning they're doing it to get a reward rather than, hey, this is what is moral and what is right. And that's our presentation. And thank you all for watching.